Hey guys, Tarke here. I want to give an update on Tarke bow build TM. Now, before we get into it, a couple of things. Just got out of the bath, so I'm a bit spacey, and yeah, I do have two t-shirts. But anyway, point being, there are some things I really like and really dislike about this build, and I'm going to be doing some pretty major reworks. Now, we're level 74, so very early days, and we've just been doing the good old Dried Lake Farm Arena. Dried Lake for days. And throughout the leveling process, I've been swapping a lot of things about the build, skill-wise, different skill setups. It's one of the things I really like and dislike about bows. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about bow meta stuff, where the character's at, where the character might go. So starting off with skills. So at the moment, I'm currently using Split Arrow. And I have been swapping between Split Arrow, Tornado Shot, Ice Shot, and that's better. Lightning Arrow. Now, I'm also using Blast Rain, and I did use Barrage Single Target for a while. I'm really liking Blast Rain Single Target, and I feel like Blast Rain kind of got forgotten when the whole... Okay, history. So, before Ascendancy, most people used to always just play Chain. Chain was like the go-to setup. You're doing bow builds, do something with Chain. Tornado Shot got added in, people started doing stuff with Pierce, people started doing stuff not running Chain, not running Pierce. But generally, Chain was like the go-to map clear. Then Frostwall got added into the game with the, well, I say added. People started becoming aware of the whole Frostwall LA interactions, and this was before Mathel, but you know, it was kind of when Mathel was streaming it that became big. Then everyone was doing Pierce Frostwall. Pierce Frostwall got removed from the game. You no longer have the stupid one-shotting stuff with Lightning Arrow Frostwall, and everyone still just does Pierce by default. Very few streamers in general play that many bow builds, and generally speaking, when bow builds do get brought up, people tend to just do the whole Pierce setup. So I really wanted to experiment with Chain, because this league I've just been doing bow build after bow build after bow build, and I hadn't played a Chain build yet. So I've been doing Chain at the moment, and I'm liking it. It does have its weaknesses. It does come with the less damage, and it is weird. Chain feels amazing, and then suddenly, it's like, what happens to my damage? Just like killing. And then you just like go into a new zone. This is while leveling, and you're like, hang on, damage? It's one of the weird things I noticed with bow builds, more so than melee builds. I'm not sure if it's just the mechanics of the skills, just the state of stuff like Blade Flurry and Earthquake, but it's very rare that you just enter a zone and suddenly go, hang on, what happened to my damage? Guess it's time for me to get a new bow. Now, Split Arrow feels the smoothest. Out of all of the skills, Split Arrow to me just feels smooth. I also really like how quality on Split Arrow gives attack speed. It just feels good. It doesn't have the damage output of some of the other options, but it just feels really smooth. And that's one thing which I like about it. And it's one of those things of, if you're farming easy, low-end content, big open maps, it just feels the best, in my personal opinion. It also has easy links. You don't need to worry about GMP, LMP, any of that stuff. It just feels smooth. Damage isn't the best. Lightning Arrow. Lightning Arrow is the, like, just everything dies AoE. Very good for AoE clusters, but it has high mana costs, GMP chain, all that stuff, and it doesn't have any single target. It's just like, you do it, cool, now I need to use my single target setup. Tornado Shot has the benefit of good AoE. I would argue that Lightning Arrow has better AoE, especially in clumped up, like in breaches especially. Lightning Arrow into a breach pack feels amazing because of all the chain and AoE overlap that happens with Lightning Arrow. But Tornado Shot's much better for when there's a breach and there's a nice big tanky rare, and you can just do it without having to worry about swapping to other setups. The chain is still naturally picking off other things. You can also run Tornado Shot without chain or pierce, which is quite nice. So, you know, there's that. Ice Shot. Ice Shot is a funny one. Ice Shot was something I used a little bit at the early leveling, and it's actually something that I want to start testing around again with. Yoji, if you're there, hello. Yoji's always been a big fan of Ice Shot, and he was actually playing a Ice Shot Pathfinder back in Prophecy, and everyone was like, lol, Ice Shot. I've mocked him a few times playing Ice Shot over Lightning Arrow, but in hardcore, Ice Shot is really nice. You do get the chilled ground everywhere. You do have the option of doing full elemental conversion, because Ice Shot gives you initial 50% into cold, and then if you're using Fizz to Nightling, you get that 100% conversion. That's really juicy. Very good for making sure that your Herald of Ice is triggering. Herald of Ice is generally the go-to curse setup for bows because it just curses better than Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder is good for cursing in the sense that, oh, there's just one boss by itself. Your Herald of Thunder is selected from your map clear. Ching, 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 it curses. But it's not very good for actually cursing map clear because it doesn't off-screen very well. You off-screen with most of your attacks. And it just doesn't have the same coverage. It's better for single target, whereas Herald of Ice is better for just like coverage map clear. And generally, you're using Assassin's Mark. Sorry, I've just had a bath, so I've noticed that I haven't put anything in my hair. Whatever, I'm getting distracted. Vayne Tarke is Vayne. Herald of Ice is just like good map clear, Poggy champion. So, yeah. So you go, well, Tarke, that sounds really good. You've just gone through all these different bow skill options and how they all have their different strengths and weaknesses. And what's the issue here? The problem is they play the same. And some of you might disagree with me. Some people might say, well, no, they play completely differently. With Tornado Shot, you need to aim slightly behind the statue to do maximum damage. But one of the strengths and weaknesses of bow skills in general is you just get to fire. And it doesn't really matter what setup I'm doing. It just changes the animation. They have their own different utilities. They all have their own slight strengths and weaknesses. But the play style is all very, very similar. Blast Rain is really the only thing which stands out because you aim differently. Your whole character functions differently. It feels different to just using Barrage. Barrage feels very similar to Split Arrow in the sense that it's just kind of like point and click, fires in a line. At least with Blast Rain, you know, the way that it actually attacks and the fact that it's an AoE reticle, it feels different the way that you attack around corners with it, the way that you can sort of hit things that you normally quite wouldn't. People who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. People think you're just rambling at this point. Apologies, but you kind of get what I feel. And I just really hope that they add some new bow skills which change this kind of setup. A few people have mentioned in the past, I know I'd be a massive fan of it, an idea of like a charged up shot. So like a power shot, like it starts off and it's just like a small AoE. And then as you charge it up, it gets more powerful and wider. And then you just like shoot out this massive, like either a charged up volley or a single giant ballista shot. But instead of just a straight line, imagine if it had like a mini charge, and the more you charge it, the larger it got. So kind of flame blast, but volley-like or projectile. You could either do it where like it added more arrows, like imagine a multi-shot which starts off with 3, and then the longer you hold it down, the more arrows get added onto it, or you can just do a single charge. It'd be cool if there'd be some way that you could do it while moving. Like, if you could be charging up the shot while you're running, but maybe it slows you by 5% or something. I'm not a game designer, I'm just saying it'd be cool to have a new interesting bow skill which just kind of performs slightly differently. So get on that, GGG. But anyway, back into this build, because I said that this build had some strengths and weaknesses. So damage is my main concern at the moment. I am using the Doomfletch Prism, and I have pretty decent Fizz jewelry considering my level. So you can see I've got a nice all-res ring, decent amount of resistances, has Wed, has Flat Fizz, bunch of Flat Fizz, some resistance, some life, bunch of Flat Fizz, some resistance, some life. And we are using a rear guard. Now, we're not using drill neck because I wanted to avoid pierce. And we want to do block, meaning I'm not running a GG rare. This is like my main biggest issue. Not running a drill neck feels really nice. Running a rear guard feels really bad. I like the block. Defensively, the block is cool. I have 30% block, 44% spell block, and 30% spell dodge. Now, this is one of my biggest issues of the build. So if I press roomies, I go up to 50% block, 72% spell block. I have the access to 4% more block here. I have the access of 2% block on gloves. Okay? So I can get another 6% block there. I also get 8% block when I get hit. So, you know, if we use the roomies, this should go up to 56. It goes up to 64% block, cap spell block. So you go, well, Tarke, that sounds amazing. It requires a flask to use. it requires some skill points, and it requires a glove enchant. So let's assume we don't use the glove. So that puts it down to 62%. Now that feels okay. But at the moment, that involves skill point investment. It involves a lot of traveling. And it involves a flask. Without a flask, and without this recently buffed from Painforged, I'm basically just an acro character. Now, I have the advantage that my armor doesn't get cut in half, and my ES doesn't get cut in half. I do have some armor. And obviously, this goes up when I use my roomies, and, you know, I can get more armor on gear. I can run more hybrid pieces. I'm mostly just running evasion pieces. So I don't need to worry about that. However, unless I go full out on armor stacking on gear, it's unlikely that I'm going to have a high enough armor value for it really to be that significant. Because as everyone knows, the way that armor works in this game is against small hits, armor is great. Against big hits, armor is meaningless unless you have a load of it. I'm not going to have more than... Realistically, I'd be lucky to have more than 15k armor with my roomies active with very good gear. Realistically. 15k armor against most things is okay. Against anything significant, it is meaningless. I'm going to be blocking and dodging most things. The only times you really care is when that big boss hits you, or that scary, powerful crits rower charges you from... I feel so stupid saying rower, because realistically, when have rowers actually been relevant in this game? Okay, let me rephrase that. When that powerful crits skelly decides to randomly one-tap you when you're running lab, that's more realistic. It's just like, it's sometimes just like a white skelly, you're just running lab, and you just like open a door, just like, like what? Why did that hit me? But okay. But anyway, my point being is that it's unlikely that I'm going to have enough armor that it's going to be meaningless. So without all this heavy investment, I basically just have the stats of an acro build, and I travel all the way over here. Now I do get a lot of crit, which is nice, and the one thing that I really like is smashing strikes. The 10% chance to gain endurance charge on bow crit strike means I'm always at maximum endurance charges. That feels amazing. It feels so good. However, is that worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points? Not quite. What else do I get in the area? We get some just fizz. And we get a bit of block. Some power charge on block. Realistically, we get all my power charges from my curse on hit setup, so this doesn't really do anything. I mean, it's some crit. Now, if I spent these 15 points and instead came up here, I could get phase aggro. Well, let's do it realistically, right? So, let's say that we drop those points. I could get phase aggro. Okay, so that makes up for all, like, the block and stuff that we lost. I could come up here. I could get life. Get this. Fizz and crit. Life, crit, crit, life. Less points, more life. This is 25% more life. We lost this crit, but we got this crit. Slightly less crit, but a lot more life. And yeah. I think you can see where I'm going with this. A few other things you can then do. You can then drop these points. Since we're acro, this armor or whatever is kind of more. Come up this way. Grab that. Grab that. That's 104 points. Grab Ballistic Mastery. Grab Aspect of the Eagle. I don't know. Grab Deadly Draw. Yeah, this is realistically what I would do. All this fizz and attack speed. makes up for all of that fizz. And, yeah. Okay, so basically what we've done is we've made a generic bow tree. Just drop that point. And do that. Or whatever. But you get my point. I'm not too sold on all this heavy investment because realistically in-game we're not actually getting that much out of the block. At the moment we're basically a slightly more effective, like the block is slightly more effective than dodge, and we do get to layer it with, for example, perfect form, which feels good. But I don't feel like we're making the best use of our ascendancy. Another thing is, for people who remember, originally I was recommending this, Outmatched and Outlast. Now, we have enough regen that we can just run Blood Rage. And the 10% more damage is nice. But I think I would rather just do this. And then do this. Now, the reason being is that Outmatched and Outlast gave me the Frenzy Charge Generation. It gave me the 10% reduced Fizz damage while at maximum endurance charges. Now, I already have max endurance charges all the time. And most of the damage at the moment is scary elemental damage thanks to breaches. And the endurance charges that I already have and have invested into my build already give me good enough Fizz mit. If you take Blood in the Eyes, you get 6% reduced damage from everything, assuming they're bleeding, but you have 50% chance to bleed, so everything's always bleeding. So this has less ramp on a single target scenario. So imagine you enter a boss room and there's just one boss. Now, you attack a few times and you get your endurance charges up because every time you crit, this is assuming you stick with the old tree, every time you crit, you get an endurance charge, right? And then you have 10% Fizz mit. Cool. This is 50% chance to cause bleed with attacks, right? So in the time it would take me to ramp up to full endurance charges, they'll definitely be bleeding. At which point, we would just have blanket 6% reduced damage taken from all like damage sources. It could be a elemental boss, it could be a caster, it could be a whatever. We also slow them from the main, and we get the damage ramp, and we don't need to worry about generating frenzy charges. So we get a more consistent damage ramp. Also, the minor nodes, this doesn't give me anything. This at least gives me 10% increased fizz. It's not much, but it's something, right? So it's like, it's a more significant boost and a more reliable, more well-rounded defense. So what does that mean? I'm going to stick with this whole Gladiator thing, but I'm going to be shifting a lot of my focus into a more standardized bow build. I'm going to try and make the block thing still work for me. However, we're going to shift into this route. We're not going to invest too heavily. Another thing is, so you know how I said that I had all this like pretty good fizz jewelry? I can clear decently well. I'm just farming Dread like the moment, and I can clear well with my Doomfletch. The thing which worries me about my Doomfletch, however, is assuming I keep the tree as is, right? Assuming I keep the tree exactly as is. I've kind of picked up all the damage I can get, right? I can change the tree slightly to get Deadly Draw, but you know, I've kind of picked up all of my scaling. And until I get to 80 plus and have perfect steel rings in hardcore at the moment cost about 30 to 40 chaos. Well, 35 to 40 chaos just for a base steel ring. Just like a blank steel ring, right? So I need 2. So it will cost me like 80 odd chaos just to get 2 plain steel rings, and then I need to craft into them. Now, for me to get into the high content and for this to work really well, I'm going to have to do that. I could, however, just take the 80 chaos and invest in like a GG Harbinger bow, or make my own Harbinger bow. And I think that's what I'm going to do, and drop this whole Doomfletch thing. Invest more heavily into the fizz. I need to worry less about elemental reflect. I need to worry less about elemental resistances. It would make the bleed feel more significant, because the bleed is based on the fizz damage, and if I'm using just a GG fizz Harbinger, then, you know, it adds a bit of damage there. Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is, I went on a bit of a rant about bow skills, But basically, I think I'm going to mess with the tree quite heavily. Now, if I can't make this work, like this whole Pain-Forged, Blood in the Eyes things work for me, then what I will most likely do is swap the Ascendancy to either... This is assuming I stay on this character. What I might do is, if I can't make this work for me at all, but I'm really liking the mechanics of the build, I might do it as like a Deadeye or something, but what I would most likely just do is either turn it into a champion. And this is also another thing, right? So, this 20% reduced damage taken just from everything. This, to me, kind of just feels like a more reliable defense than this, with the less investment, because the investment is you just get it via, like, Lab Ascendancy. The minor nodes are actually more useful than these minor nodes. You can get this, which gives movement speed, which is pretty nice. You get access to First Strike, Last to Fall, which gives damage. Like, depending on this line here, Blood in the Eyes and Gratuitous Violence, depending on how much I like this line, if I want a defensive duelist-based Sensei, I might just swap it to a champion. Otherwise, what I would do is I would just do this and then pick up this eventually. This would be, again, very nice defense in the fact that 50% reduced Fizz Reflect is very nice for juicy crit Harbinger Bow builds. 20% more damage is obviously 20% more damage. These minor nodes, bows count as 200 weapons, so this is actually like good scaling. Surprising, right? Onslaught is obviously very nice. Movement speed, attack speed, beautiful. Getting the 20% cull is obviously beautiful. Getting Super Leech, really, really nice. Like, this is really solid defense. And again, this is kind of like, this defense kind of outweighs this defense. Because this, like, block doesn't stop you from getting one shot, right? Having a high HP total stops you from getting one shot. Oh, and this is a big thing that I've kind of left out of the whole thing, right? So, while at the moment I have very good layered defense, I kind of feel like just dropping the perfect form and just whacking in a Combs Heart. Because, and this is something that I've realized on my Explosive Arrow build, you just need life. Like, you need 7k life because the game is stupid. And until they, like, change the way that life works, and I realize in this lighting, this t-shirt makes it look really washed out, so apologies. Anyway, Anyway. You just need, like, at least 7k life. I think that's my new, like, breakpoint. It keeps going up. I keep saying, like, the breakpoint keeps going up. Until they change the way that life works, you just need 7k life in your life build to play hardcore. So, I might just use a Combs. And then I could use Tornado Shot, AoE single target. I can still do chain stuff. I don't need to be Pierce. Then you drop the perfect form. At which point, you lose the spell dodge, obviously. And then you literally just have the defense of an acro build. So that was kind of a fairly major point I missed out of this whole spiel. Is without the perfect form shenanigans, you may as well just be an acro build. In which case, you're spending ascendancy points to get acro and traveling a shit ton and using a bad quiver, right? Because if you drop the whole block thing, you can use a rare quiver with like 100 flat life, crit multi, attack speed, resists. Changes are coming. So yeah. We're going to mess around with the build. Probably going to go GG Rare Harbinger. We're going to mess around with this, see if I like it. Worst case scenario, I'll just swap the Ascendancy into a Slayer and do Bow Slayer. I'd most likely do Slayer over Champion. It depends. It depends. But we're probably going to do something more traditional, shall we say. But anyway, I will keep you guys updated. I need to do a lot of farming on this character to, one, get all the regrets. I'm almost definitely going to drop this whole section, but for now, my main focus is going to be picking up a nice Harbinger bow. I'm Tarke. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with my rambles. And what are your guys' thoughts on the state of bows, assuming you're not doing something shenanigansy with poison? Because again, I'm trying to avoid poison with this build. We've done a lot of poison. I'm trying to just see the options of bow builds without poison these days, because, you know, we're all predicting this massive poison nerf Inc. So yeah. Have a good day. Have a good night. Bye-bye.